Quebec and British Columbia are provinces that are pretty far apart from each other, so if you are wondering what the differences between indigenous communities in Quebec and BC are, then this video is for you. So without any further ado, let's get started. I'll start off with a bit of background. For the indigenous community in Quebec, I chose the Pessamit Nation. The Pessamit Nation, formerly known as Betsiamites, are an indigenous community living on a reservation along the Betsiamites River, which is a river in Quebec. A 2021 report showed that their population was 2,428 people. The Pessamit are in the Innu category, which is a classification name for communities in Quebec and Labrador. Researchers have found sites from 5,500 BCE that show evidence of people living on the land. The people of Pessamit lived normally until the year 1534, when French explorer Jacques Cartier met people in Pessamit that he called Montagnais. He also called the land and river Betsiamites. In 1603, a French cartographer named Samuel de Champlain drew a map dividing the land. From 1632 to 1782, French missionaries evangelized and converted Montagnais people. In 1851, a request was made for 70,000 acres of land to be given to the Montagnais people from the government, and in 1852 this request was granted. From 1849 to 1861, the Montagnais people of Betsiamites had to build houses, chapels, farms, and hospitals. In 1862, the act for creating a Betsiamite Indian reservation was signed. In 1901, Christian women from the Sisters of Good Counsel gave lessons to the Montagnais children. In 1979, the responsibility of education was given to the Band Council. In 2001, the Betsiamites changed their name from Montagnais and Betsiamites to just Pessamit, which brings us to right now. Today, the Pessamit people are finding success on their reserve. Their website has a newsletter that showcases events they hold, such as drumming, singing, and dancing. The Catholic Church has also succeeded in converting the people of Pessamit. A vast majority of Pessamit people identify as Christians. The Pessamit speak French, but their traditional language is the language of Innu. The Innu language is part of the Algonquian family. It has been spoken for thousands of years. Unfortunately, as a result of colonization, several stories, legends, and anecdotes have been lost. Community members in Pessamit are trying to preserve the language and history and educate more people on it. Pessamit culture involves a lot of sacred objects. One of the most popular objects is the tuikan, which means sacred drum. The tuikan is a highly respected tool in the Innu community, as well as Pessamit. They often use it for hunting and herding caribou. The color and artwork on the drum is also extremely symbolic and represents the holder of the drum. Originally, the Pessamit mainly hunted in forests for caribou, beavers, bears, and hares. They would also hunt for birds like the partridge. Hunting was the main activity that the Pessamit people did early on. The 6 core values of the Pessamit people consist of respect, trust, honesty, cooperation, family, and nature. They also sometimes call these values healing values, and they are put in place to create a sense of community and strengthen the bonds between the Pessamit people. The Pessamit originally operated like a group of independent people, but in 1981 they adopted a band council system with elected members and elections every 2 years. The current chief of Pessamit is Marielle Vachon, who was elected in 2022. The council consists of one chief and 6 other elected advisors. A big issue that the Pessamit Nation, as well as other Innu communities, face is climate change. The Pessamit are located near a large forest, and with forest fires increasing, this is harmful for people living in Pessamit. This also affects their financial stability, since forestry and logging contribute a sizable amount to the Pessamit economy. Now for BC, I'm going to talk about the Musqueam people. Musqueam is a community on the lower mainland of BC near the Fraser River. Historically, they have always been a moving community that utilized the resources the land provided for fishing, trapping, hunting, and gathering. The Musqueam's history is believed to go back thousands of years, beginning with a network of villages spanning all across the Fraser Delta. In 1791 and 1792, Musqueam leaders met with the first settlers. They began trading items like food, canoes, and copper. Many diseases were also brought from the settlers to the Canadian west coast, which led to a catastrophic loss of life. In 1827, the Hudson's Bay Company established Fort Langley on the Fraser River, which led to more settlers. In 1858, as a result of the Fraser River gold rush, a lot more settlers were coming in, so the British declared the mainland a colony and promised 160 acres of land for new farmers, while giving indigenous communities like Musqueam small amounts of land. Between 1871 and 1927, the Indian Act and other laws were made that displaced indigenous people, destroyed a large amount of their culture, and denied them certain rights such as banning potlatches and not letting them hire lawyers. But in 1951, discriminatory parts of the Indian Act, such as potlatch bans and lawyer restrictions, were lifted. The Calder case in 1973 recognized the existence of Aboriginal people. In 1984, a court ruled that the Canadian government had a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests for Indigenous people. In 1990, fishing rights for the Musqueam were reaffirmed, and in 1991, the Musqueam purchased the Fraser Arms Hotel with the goal of protecting their land. Today, the Musqueam community is a fast-growing community of over 1,300 people. However, many of the members still live on small portions of reserve territory. More efforts have been made to protect the Musqueam land and improve the quality of life. In 2012, after 200 days of protesting, the Musqueam succeeded in stopping the development of a housing complex on their land, which led to a negotiation that would benefit both parties. The traditional language of the Musqueam people is called Hakamelam. Unfortunately, due to colonization, there are no longer any native speakers. This has not stopped the Musqueam people from making efforts to maintain the language. In 1970, the Musqueam began revitalizing the language by documenting, researching, and teaching others. So far, they've successfully created an alphabet. The Musqueam people continue to practice their traditions and culture on a daily basis. Some examples of their culture include drumming, sacred ceremonies that can be both formal and informal, as well as sharing meals in large groups. Traditionally, the main staple food in the Musqueam diet was salmon, but they would also regularly hunt deer, elk, bears, goats, and birds. They used nets and snares to help with catching them. According to the Musqueam people, their values consist of respect, pride, inclusiveness, honor, and shared responsibilities. They also state that it is the responsibility of everyone in the community to ensure a prosperous future for the future generations. The Musqueam people operate under a chief and council system, with one chief and 10 councilors that are elected every 4 years. The current leader is Chief Wayne Sparrow. The Musqueam people also have control over their own laws and bylaws, making them sectorially governed. On their official website, the Musqueam community explains the devastating long-term impact that residential schools have had on them. This includes the banning of their ceremonies and attempts to assimilate their language, culture, and people. Now for some similarities and differences. For similarities, the Musqueam and Pessamit people both have a similar system of governance. Pessamit has one chief and 6 advisors, with elections every 2 years, while Musqueam has one chief and 10 councilors, elected every 4 years. Both communities have settled along a body of water, with Pessamit being near the Pessamite River and the Musqueam being near the Fraser River. Drumming is an important part of both nations' culture and identity. Both communities had to endure the residential school system, and there's also clear scientific evidence that proves that both communities have been living on this land for thousands of years. Now for differences. The biggest difference today is that Pessamit primarily speaks French and they're located in Quebec, while Musqueam is located in British Columbia and primarily speaks English. The people of Pessamit did not hunt for many fish despite being near a river, but for Musqueam, fish, especially salmon, plays a major role in the Musqueam diet. The majority of Pessamit people are Catholic Christians, while the people of Musqueam do not seem to have many ties to Christianity. The Pessamit encountered settlers hundreds of years before the Musqueam did. This led to the Pessamit nation signing more treaties with settlers and more buildings being constructed. The Pessamit also signed a deal that provided them with their own land reservation more early on. For the Musqueam, they were pushed off of their land and forced to live on small plots of territory. In conclusion, the Pessamit and Musqueam, despite some similarities, are two very different indigenous communities in Canada. They both have different languages, values, and cultures. Both communities have their own unique history and stories, and they both have a promising future ahead. The Pessamit are continuing their traditions and maintaining success on their land, while the Musqueam are making significant progress in terms of quality of life. They are also managing to preserve their language and saving it for the future. This is the end of the video. Thanks for watching and have a good rest of your day.